Hi, my name is Rohan Fernando, and I'd like to introduce Francesca Ekwuyasi, the director of Black and Belonging, who I'm thrilled to have selected as the opening film to Becoming Labrador. Welcome, Francesca.
Thank you so much, Rohan. I recently just watched Becoming Labrador, and it was so moving. It was incredibly moving, and it was obviously a difficult topic, but such a common. It's a reality for so many people all over the world, and I just found that the film handled the emotions of the subjects with so much compassion and yeah, just so much compassion and empathy. There were several moments where I was like,
Thank, thank you.
so thank.
And I have to say that this was a film that was, directed by three directors: myself, Tamara Segura, and Justin Sims. And I think we're all pretty nice people, and I think we came together, that was really our driving force, was to look from a very compassionate perspective. And I have to say, your film, I found there was a lot of your subjects were so comfortable with you, and they express themselves in such um, uh, unabashed ways, and really, you really pulled out their individuality in such a short period of time.
Okay, I'm going to respond to that, but I feel the exact same about Becoming Labrador. So I have to ask, like, how did it work with three directors? Um, was it based on the different locations because it moves between a few locations? So was it how did you and the other directors establish such intimacy with these subjects to a point where they really shared their lives with you? And then I'll speak to what you said.
The I mean, to be honest, we originally started out with three separate films. We each of us were going to make a short film each, and find characters from that community. And what ended up happening was, each of the stories felt kind of so connected to each other, and it felt like we were making a portrait of the community rather than individuals. So it made sense to bring it together. But to answer your question of how to make them feel comfortable, I think we just became friends with them. We spent a lot of time going up there before we even turned on the cameras. So traveling up to Goose Bay, Labrador is, it's two flights. It's from Halifax. We're in the same time zone, but it would be like 4.5 hours travel just to get there. And so we could only go up a few times a year. So periodically we'd go up for, 1 to 2 week periods of time that we would spend with these families who were all working very hard. Most of them had two jobs. But I think both Tamara and I, as immigrants, first generation immigrants to the country, their stories we really connected with them. And Ray, he was like he was like my dad. Like if I got to see my dad 30 years ago when he first came and before he brought us over, it was like this is what my dad was living. So it was easy to connect. It was easy to empathize, and I think they felt that too. So the conversations and the film really came out of that genuine connection that we all had. And Justin may have not been a recent immigrant. He's from Labrador City, a few generations, and but he's just a fantastic filmmaker and a super empathetic person, and we all became friends. So I think um, that foundation really kind of hopefully came through in the final film.
It did so much. It was stunning. Thank you for the chance to watch it, really.
Thank you. And how did you find your subjects?
Well, so I think I got lucky because I don't have any formal training in filmmaking or in journalism or anything. So I was just like, I can't ask strangers to tell me about their experiences with racism. I need to establish relationships. And I just learned from, walking around with my dinky camera and asking friends to introduce me to friends. And I learned that I have to establish a relationship, and they have to feel that I'm a safe and worthwhile person to talk with. So it was a lot of exchanging. So what ends up in this short film is after a lot of talking and lots of spending time together, and I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, it doesn't show, but we're having conversations. But that part is edited out. It's just a focus on the artist. But I think it feels like more organic because in the process we are just having a conversation. So yeah,
They were remarkably comfortable. And and I and I was curious also, they're all, each of them break stereotypes in their own way in terms of how we look at um, Black people in Nova Scotia specifically. Were you conscious of, for in terms of your choice?
No, that was not intentional, but I think it speaks to the community that I've made. So they're all artists. Like I would have loved to interview scientists and all other types of people, but these are the people that were within arm's reach in terms of the community I'm in here. Um, and I adore that they break stereotypes so much. Um, and there are some moments where things got perhaps more emotional than the artist might have wanted to share um, in the moment.
Yeah. Why is that? Like, what specifically?
So, like with Maje, for example, he's a Black man, and there's too many overbearing stereotypes of what that means in terms of being vulnerable and sensitive. And Maje is also a very quiet man and reserved. And he had a moment where he shared a really vulnerable thing, and we just sat with it. We just kept the camera rolling and allowed it. And of course, I sent him a rough cut before to make sure that he was comfortable what he'd said, and luckily he was. Luckily, he allowed it to go get into the final part. But I appreciated that part. That you can't make that happen. It,
Well, I remember the part you're speaking of, and I don't want to ruin it for the audience. Maybe they've seen it by now, but um, it it was very organic how he delivered it, and it seemed very relevant to what he was talking about. But clearly, something he decided to give you in the moment.
yeah. Yeah, it's so hard not to be completely overwhelmed with gratitude when people are just sharing their stories. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I appreciate the most about documentary is, in relation to, say, fiction, is the unknown quality. Like, it's even the term director is a bit more complicated in documentary because you're not really directing everything. It's really about what um, your subjects are giving to you, but also what the universe is giving to you in those moments. Um, One of the things that I wanted to kind of share about Becoming Labrador, and there's a scene where Ray gets his visa. Um, that happened completely accidentally. He literally been waiting 4 years for that 4 years for that visa. And this was the first day we were filming with him. And we filmed with him, and the crew left. They were packing the car, and he called me back and said, I just got this email. Can you tell me what it is? Because he was about to erase it. It was literally Immigration Canada saying, "Here's your visa. You can bring your family to," and that's the scene that you see where and that had to, like, get the crew back immediately and start filming again.
Oh
But
my
those
God,
are magical moments, right?
such a gift, because I think it would have been an entirely different film, and perhaps not. I just halfway through the film, I was like, I need everything to be okay. Like I need one thing to be okay. And I feel like that happening was kind of the gift that as a viewer, um, really made the ending stronger because it wasn't just one note in
Mhm.
terms of the experience of this person. It was completely nuanced because immigration decided at that moment to approve
Yeah.
paperwork. Yeah. How
Is it,
did you meet these? Oh, sorry.
yeah, how did, actually I met, well, that was an interesting process too, because um, these were three films that were initially developed by the writer Michael Crummey from St. John's, a phenomenal writer. And he researched three short films basically that we then were hired as three different directors to direct, which I've never done that before. And this was something that was a brainchild of Annette Clark, our executive producer. And from a radio show she listened to on Father's Day about um, one of these, he wasn't in the film ultimately, but he was talking about missing his children on Father's Day. And so so we had these three subjects already, and we went to start filming with them. And unfortunately, the subject that I was going to take on, he had some complications with involvement, particularly with his partner. So he recommended talking to, and I was like, "Who's been here for a really long time?" And Ray was the one person that had been here for 4 years. So we went and talked to him. He worked at the airport, and he wasn't very enthusiastic at first. He's a shy guy, and Justin and I were there at the time, and we just kind of hung out with him for a while. A couple days actually, we just kind of hung out and didn't do anything, and finally he just started talking, and he showed us that room with the toys, and then that was it. We knew that this was going to be the third character. But yeah, I mean, there were people that we found in early development. And what about your so the one thing that I find interesting in your film is that you are a new immigrant to Nova Scotia. Um, how did that impact your process in terms of talking to people about their sense of home? And I guess this is a place you're considering as home. Um,
Yeah, I really, at this point, I mean, I've lived here for this September will make 8 years. And at the time when I first picked up a camera to attempt making films or interviewing people, I had just finished grad school, and campus life is very different than reality. So St. Mary's University is very like ethnically diverse because there's a lot of international students. I was an international student, but once I graduated and I was living more in the city, I was like, all the cafes I go to, the bars, the museums, like I don't see Black people, and I know that there are Black people here. I know historically, I've read the books. How do how do I find my way to those communities? And so in doing that, I would just ask people, like other international students, professors, I would ask like, do you know Black people who aren't like absolute newcomers like us, like international students? Um, and so I just started getting introduced to people. Anyway, I knew that I wanted to immigrate here because for a few reasons, and I've lived in a few different places at this point in my life, but that idea of belonging can sometimes feel so elusive, especially when you're an international student from like campus to campus or just traveling for a few months at a time from place to place. Um, at a certain point, it's like where you live and who your neighbors are and the cafe you go to. And, now there's the coffee shop down the road, they know my name. Things like that literally take time and consistency, which I hadn't had at the time. So I was just curious about how people from here. So two of the people I interview are from here. They're African Nova Scotian. Majay is from Preston. So people from here, and also Black people like me who aren't from here. I was just wanting to share experiences about you know, trying to make a home or trying to feel a sense of belonging. And yeah, I don't even know if that answered the question. I started rambling a bit.
I mean, did it change your idea of Halifax? I mean, was this the process of making the film?
It did, yes, it did, because I mean, it just made so clear that even people like Margie and Kate, who are from here, they still have a lot of the same feelings that I have as a newcomer. And Leona, who, similar to me, is an immigrant and has lived in different places, still had the same questions. Particularly, Leona is a parent, has 2 children, and so similar questions on behalf of her children, like what would it mean to call this home, and what would it take? Um, so it one opened my eyes to, I mean, the beauty of storytelling is that you're not alone ever. That's why I love storytelling. So it showed me that, one, I'm not alone in this experience. Obviously, there's so many immigrants and migrants and people moving always, you know, it's not unique at all. So that was a really personal way where, like, Black people like me, African people, yeah, can be at home wherever, right? But it doesn't cost nothing. I think was the other thing I learned. It doesn't cost, it's not without its price. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I grew up in Nova Scotia. I mean, when we came here we left Sri Lanka, we were in Switzerland for a couple of years, and I was 8 when we arrived in Nova Scotia, and so I grew up in the thick of Lower Sackville, you know, white suburbia, my whole life, the only brown kid, and you know, it's really formed my identity. And what's interesting about Nova Scotia is that there's a lot of things that you want to get away from, and you know, go to a bigger city where there is more diversity, and you can kind of blend into the crowd better. But then there's also, you once you stay here long enough, there's this feeling of home that is hard to find in other places. Um, and you know,
Actually, I feel bamboozled because I'm just like, I need to get out of this place. And during this pandemic, of course, I'm just like, they know me at Java Blend. I love it. I love it that somebody knows who I am. Like, if I just evaporated, people would notice, right? Whereas being a newcomer in a massive city and being sort of transient the way a lot of people have been, it's kind of easier to disappear. But yeah, there's something about sticking around that eventually it becomes home. Yeah.
do you is this a theme that you think you'll continue with? Is there another project in the works?
I mean, I mean, I think belonging as a theme is forever interesting to me. I know what you're working on though.
Well, I'm now producing at the film board, so I don't have the opportunity to direct new projects myself, but I am enjoying producing other people's work, which is great. And you know, and I hope you and I will work together one day soon.
Hope so.
And I wanted to thank you for being part of this conversation and joining our screening with yours.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.